The first thing I remember is the light, a searing, white-hot explosion behind my eyes that erased everything. No sound of twisting metal, no impact, just that silent, consuming flash. Then, nothing. I woke up 14 days later in a sterile room at Harborview Medical Center. The air smelled of antiseptic and bleach. A doctor with tired eyes told me I'd been in an accident on I-5. My parents, Eleanor and Mark, were there, their faces pale masks of relief. They fussed over me, their hands fluttering like nervous birds. I should have felt comforted. I felt nothing but a deep, cold wrongness, a sensation that the world had been tilted a few degrees off its axis while I was asleep. The ride home to our neighborhood in North Seattle was the first confirmation. My mother's relief seemed to stutter and glitch. One moment she was smiling, tears in her eyes. The next her expression would go blank, her features slack before resetting into a concerned frown. It was subtle, but I saw it. My father was worse. He drove our Ford Explorer with a rigid, robotic precision. He never turned to look at me, but his eyes in the rearview mirror were constant. They were fixed on my reflection, unblinking, pupils dark and depthless. I stared back, a silent challenge. He never flinched, but he never looked away either. The only time his eyes moved was to snap back to the road, only to drift back a second later. Our house felt like a museum diorama of a home. It was perfectly clean, perfectly quiet, but it was a hollow shell. The light was different. The generous windows that usually flooded the living room with Pacific Northwest sun were now shaded, the blinds drawn to precisely 3/4 of the way down, casting long, identical shadows across the floor. The air was still and carried the faint, sweet smell of something decaying, though I could never find the source. The days bled into one another. Doctor's orders kept me home from my summer job at a landscaping crew, so I retreated into my room, moving my Xbox upstairs. The conversations at dinner were scripts. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" "Fine." "Did you get enough to eat?" "Yes." My father's work hours grew longer, but I started to notice things. I'd hear the garage door open and close, but I never actually heard his car start. My mother's presence was a series of sounds, the soft shuffling drag of her slippers on the upstairs hallway runner, the click of her bedroom door opening and closing. I rarely saw her. The few times I did, her smile was a trembling, uncertain thing. A week after I was home, the milk soured. My mother, who was militant about expiration dates, seemed surprised. She suggested a trip to the QFC on Aurora Avenue. It was there, under the harsh fluorescent lights, that the wrongness spread beyond my home. As we walked the aisles, people stopped. They didn't just glance, they stared. Their carts would drift to a halt. Their heads would turn and their eyes would lock onto me with a vacant, processing intensity. A stock boy stacking cans of soup froze, his hand hovering in midair, his mouth slightly agape. A woman comparing cereal boxes turned her entire body to watch me pass, her face a blank slate. And every time, the moment I made eye contact, they'd snap back to what they were doing, a veneer of normalcy slamming down so fast it was dizzying. I could hear the rustle of their clothes as they turned back to watch me once I'd passed. I asked my mom if she was okay. Her face did that flickering thing. "I'm just tired, honey," she said, her voice a perfect imitation of weariness. That was the day I quit the painkillers and threw my vape pen in the trash. I was losing my mind, and I needed an anchor. I needed my friends. I texted the group chat, Jake, Leo, and Mason. We made plans to meet at Green Lake Park the next day. The sun was out, burning away the usual Seattle haze. For the first time since waking up in the hospital, the tight coil of anxiety in my chest began to loosen. We met by the community center. The dap-up was a little stiff, a little formal, but soon we were laughing, falling into our old rhythms.
We walked the path around the lake, and for a glorious hour, everything was normal. The world was real again. The nightmare was just in my head. We found an empty stretch of grass and threw a frisbee. I was laughing, actually laughing, my muscles aching in a good way. The sun was warm on my skin. I bent over, hands on my knees, catching my breath. "I'm parched," I said, nodding toward a public water fountain a few yards away. I went over and took a long drink, the cold water shocking my system. As I straightened up, wiping my mouth, a sudden primal chill swept over me. The feeling of being watched was so intense, it was physical. My phone was in my hand. The afternoon sun glared off the screen, turning it into a perfect black mirror. I tilted it slightly, and I saw them. Jake and Leo were standing exactly where I'd left them, but they weren't relaxed. They were rigid, their bodies held in a predatory stillness. Their jaws were unhinged, hanging open far too wide, stretching the skin of their cheeks taut. Their eyes were dark pits, fixed unwaveringly on my back. Their arms hung limp at their sides, fingers curled like claws.
Mason's face was a mess of twitching, spastic motion, features morphing and shifting like a corrupted video file. The most horrifying part was the sound. They were still talking. Leo was in the middle of a story about a party. Jake was laughing. The sounds were coming out of them, normal, familiar sounds, but their grotesque, gaping mouths weren't moving at all. A jolt of pure terror electrocuted my system. My fingers spasmed and my phone clattered onto the concrete path. "You good, man?" Mason asked, his voice laced with a concern his flickering face couldn't match. I forced air into my lungs. "Yeah," I croaked, bending to retrieve my phone with a trembling hand. "Yeah, just head rush, concussion stuff." I didn't look at them directly. I couldn't. I made an excuse about a sudden skull-splitting headache and said I had to go home. I could feel their eyes on me as I walked away. I didn't get on my bike immediately. I lingered by Jake's Jeep, making stupid jokes about the dent in the bumper, anything to buy time. I casually glanced into side mirrors, into the dark tint of the car windows, trying to catch their reflection again. I never did. It was like they knew. Their bodies were always turned just enough, their heads tilted at just the right angle to avoid giving me another glimpse. They were playing with me. The bike ride home was a blur of panic. The sunny day now felt hostile, the light too exposing. I needed to get off the street. I decided to put my bike in the old storage shed in the back alley instead of the main garage, wanting to avoid any interaction. I wrestled with the old padlock on the shed door before it gave way. The door swung open with a groan, releasing a cloud of dust and the smell of damp wood and gasoline. I pushed my bike inside, my eyes struggling to adjust to the dim light filtering through a single grimy window. And then I saw it. My car. My beat-up 2004 Honda Civic. The one they told me had been compacted into a metal cube. The one my father had handed me $250 for, calling it a generous scrap value. It was parked right in the center of the shed. It wasn't just intact, it looked like it had just been washed and waxed. There wasn't a single scratch on the dark blue paint. I moved forward, my hand reaching out to touch the cool, smooth surface of the hood. It was real. I peered inside. The interior was spotless, but the driver's seat was pushed all the way back on its rails, reclined slightly, positioned for someone much larger than me. A cold tremor, deeper than fear, shook me to my core. The lie was tangible. It was sitting right in front of me. I checked the tires. They were full. I popped the hood. The engine was clean. This car hadn't been in an accident. It had been waiting.
I fled the shed, not even bothering to lock it. I burst through the back door into the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The house was silent. Too silent. And then I heard it. A rapid, skittering shuffle from upstairs. A door slammed. My mother's voice floated down, sweet and cloying. It's too high, too tight. I beelined for my room, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, breathing heavily. I had to know. I had to see what they were when they thought no one was watching. I rooted through my closet and found an old iPod Touch, a relic from middle school. I charged it for 20 minutes, my ears straining for any sound in the hall. The plan was reckless, but it was all I had. I waited until I heard the familiar shuff of my mother's footsteps retreating down the hall and the click of her door closing. I cracked my door open. The hallway was empty, lit only by the faint blue glow of the television downstairs. I crept out, my socks silent on the carpet. The linen closet was at the far end of the hall. I opened the door, plugged the iPod charger into an outlet hidden behind a stack of towels, and nestled the device on a shelf, its camera lens peeking through a gap, giving it a perfect view of the entire corridor. I started a FaceTime call to it from my phone. Back in my room, I barricaded the door. I shoved my heavy wooden dresser in front of it and wedged my desk chair into the knob. Then I sat on my bed, phone in hand, and watched the grainy, silent feed. For an hour, nothing. Just an empty hallway. Then, my parents' bedroom door didn't just open, it exploded inward. Flying open so fast, it smashed against the wall inside with a force that would have shattered the drywall. She emerged. The thing that was my mother.
She swayed into the hallway, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. Her head lolled on a neck that seemed too thin to support it. Her jaw was distended, hanging open in a silent, perpetual shriek, revealing a dark maw. The skin around her mouth was stretched thin and white, pulled back from gums that seemed too long. Her eyes were sunken deep into her skull, surrounded by sagging, bruised-looking flesh. She was wearing her favorite pink robe, but it hung off a frame that was all sharp, bony angles. Her arms were bent at the elbows, held out from her body. Her fingers, long, pale, and twitching, dangled limply. She stopped right outside my door. Her head tilted slowly, at an impossible angle, until her ear was almost parallel to her shoulder. She pressed the side of her face against the wood. I could hear her voice, a perfect, gentle whisper through the door. "Sweetheart, are you awake? I thought I heard a noise." Her grotesque, gaping mouth never moved. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't speak. "I can hear you breathing," the whisper came again, sweet and concerned. "Is everything okay?" I swallowed a lump of pure terror. "I'm fine, Mom," I managed, my voice cracking. I bumped my dresser. Sorry." A long, silent pause. I watched the screen. She didn't move. "Can I come in?" the whisper asked. "I just want to see you." "No," I said too quickly. I'm not decent. I'm about to get in the shower." Another pause. Then, "Okay, tomorrow then. I love you, honey."
But she didn't leave. She remained there, her face pressed against the door. And then, in the darkest corner of the video feed, near the top of the stairs, a shadow moved. It detached itself from the ceiling. A long, pale limb extended downward, fingers brushing the carpet. Then another. My father, Mark, lowered himself from the ceiling with a silent, arachnid grace. He must have been clinging there the entire time. He was even worse than her. His body was thinner, his limbs longer. His head was completely bald, his skin stretched tight over his skull. His eyes were 2 black holes. He moved on all fours, his joints bending the wrong way, scuttling up the hallway behind my mother without making a sound. He stopped right behind her, rising to his full height. They stood there together, a pair of monstrous sentinels, blocking my only way out. I watched them for what felt like an eternity. They were perfectly, utterly still.
Then, at exactly the same time, their heads tilted downward. They were looking at the base of my door. Slowly, stiffly, they began to lower themselves to the floor. Their bodies moved with a terrible, deliberate purpose. On the grainy video feed, I saw them press their distorted faces to the carpet, their black, unblinking eyes peering under the narrow gap beneath my door. They were looking for my feet. They were checking to see where I was standing in the room. I scrambled backward on my bed, pulling my feet up, making myself as small as possible. It is now 3:48 a.m. The sky outside my bay window is still pitch black. The only light in my room is the glow from my phone, showing me the two creatures patiently waiting in my hallway. They haven't moved. They just watch.
I can't wait for the sun. I don't know what they are. I don't know if the sun even affects them. The car is my only hope. The plan is the same. I open the bay window, I drop onto the roof of the porch below, I run to the shed, and I get the hell out of here. I'll drive until I can't drive anymore. The things outside my door just shifted. I saw them move on the screen. They know I'm planning something. They can probably smell the fear. I have to go now.
My name is David. I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Spokane, Washington, in a house built in the 1940s. It has a basement. I've always hated it. It's a cluttered, dusty space with a low ceiling and a stone foundation that always feels damp, no matter the season. I know every water stain, every crack in the concrete, every box of Christmas decorations we'll never use again. Which is why, 2 nights ago, the new door made my blood run cold. My wife, Sarah, was visiting her sister in Tacoma. Our 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, was asleep upstairs. It was just me, the silence, and the need to find an old box of my college textbooks I'd stored down there. The single bare bulb flickered as I descended the stairs, casting long, dancing shadows between the shelves. I found the box near the old coal chute, which had been sealed decades ago. As I turned to leave, a glint of something unnatural caught my eye. Behind the hulking, groaning furnace, in a wall that had been nothing but solid gray cinder block, was a door. It was made of dark, warped wood, streaked with moisture and age. There was no handle, just a single, tarnished brass keyhole, ornate and ancient. The air around it was frigid and carried a smell I'd never encountered before, a mix of wet soil, rust, and something sweetly rotten, like forgotten meat. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was impossible. I'd painted that wall myself last fall. I took a step closer, my hand trembling as I reached out. The wood felt icy and strangely soft, like damp rot. That's when I heard it. A whisper, faint and muffled, seeping through the cracks in the door. "Daddy?" It was Chloe's voice. Every inflection, every tiny pitch of her sweet high tone was perfect. Pure, unadulterated terror seized me. I spun around and took the basement stairs 2 at a time, my breath catching in my throat. I burst into Chloe's room, expecting the worst, but she was there, curled under her comforter, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, breathing the deep, even breaths of a child lost in a dream. I stood there for a long time, just watching her chest rise and fall, trying to calm the frantic drumming in my ears. I didn't sleep. I spent the night on the floor beside her bed, jumping at every creak the old house made. The next day, in the harsh light of the afternoon, I almost convinced myself it had been a nightmare, a trick of stress and fatigue, but the gnawing doubt wouldn't leave me. After I put Chloe to bed that night, I knew I had to go back down. I had to know. The door was still there, but now it was open. Just a sliver, a dark, impossible fissure in the wall. A cold draft poured from the opening, carrying that same foul, sweet odor. My flashlight beam cut through the blackness, illuminating narrow, crumbling stone steps that descended into an abyss far deeper than our property line should allow. This was beyond a prank. This was wrong. My every instinct screamed at me to run, to call the police, to do anything but go down those stairs. But a deeper, more terrifying need pulled me forward. The need to prove it was nothing, to silence the fear. I pushed the door open. It groaned on hinges that shouldn't have existed, a sound of protest and age. The cold hit me like a physical blow. I started down, the steps slick and uneven beneath my feet. The walls were no longer cinder block, but rough-hewn stone, weeping with a cold black moisture. I counted 40 steps, 50. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Then her voice again. It floated up from the darkness below, clear as a bell. "Daddy, it's so dark down here." It was Chloe's voice, but it was too placid, too patient. There was no fear in it, only a hollow imitation of fear. "Chloe?" I called out, my own voice a strained whisper. Silence. Then a new sound, a dry, scraping rustle. The sound of something being dragged over stone, or something dragging itself. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died, plunging me into a blackness so absolute it felt solid. It pressed in on me, cold and heavy, filling my lungs and my ears. Panic exploded in my chest. I turned and scrambled back up the stairs, blind, my hands slapping against the wet stone for purchase. I was almost at the top when a hand closed around my ankle. It was cold and strong, its grip like iron. I cried out, falling forward, my chin cracking against a step. I kicked backward wildly, my heel connecting with something solid and unyielding. I felt a fingernail, long and sharp, rake across my skin through my jeans. With a final desperate yank, I pulled my leg free and launched myself through the doorway, slamming the heavy door shut behind me. I stood there, gasping, leaning against the wood. Then, I felt it. A presence on the other side. The door vibrated with a slow, heavy pressure. I could hear breathing, a wet, ragged inhalation that was nothing human. And then, a whisper, right against the keyhole, spoken in my daughter's perfect voice.
"You closed the door, Daddy. That wasn't very nice."
I fled upstairs and didn't look back. Today, I couldn't bring myself to go down there, but I had to know. I took the baby monitor, the one we hadn't used in years, and placed the transmitter unit right at the top of the basement stairs.
I just listened to the recording. At 3:04 a.m., there was silence. At 3:07 a.m., a voice, clear and close to the microphone. "Daddy, can I come upstairs now?" At 3:08 a.m., laughter. It was Chloe's laugh, but distorted, stretched thin and laced with a malice a child could never possess. It was followed by a slow, grating sound, claws on wood. I moved without thinking. I dragged the heavy living room sofa in front of the basement door. I shoved the bookcase in front of that. I piled chairs, boxes, anything I could find into a frantic, pathetic barricade. Nothing was getting through. Then I went to Chloe's room. She was asleep, her face peaceful in the moonlight filtering through the window. For a moment, a wave of relief so powerful it made me dizzy washed over me. It was a trick. It had to be. Then her lips moved. Her eyes remained closed. "Why did you lock me in the dark, Daddy?" she whispered. Her eyes snapped open. They were black pits in the dim light, and she smiled, a wide, grotesque rictus grin that stretched far beyond the limits of her face, showing too many teeth that were just a little too sharp. "That thing in the bed is not my daughter." I stumbled out of the room and locked the door from the outside. I'm sitting here now, my back against the wall, listening. I can hear a faint scratching from the other side. It's not trying to get out. It's just scratching. I have a can of gasoline in the garage for the lawnmower. I know what I have to do. I will burn this house and everything in it to the foundation. Something ancient and wrong has taken root here, and it's wearing my little girl's face. I won't let it out.